Okay, it is 6:31, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. I will say this is probably the most smiles I've seen at this county board meeting for a long time. Roll call, please.
Williams.
Here.
Woken. Okay. Carter.
Here.
Coert.
Present.
Esri.
Here.
Furtado.
Here.
Goss.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
King.
Here.
Lokshin.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Michaels. Here. Pasalacqua.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Storr. Straub.
Present.
Summers. Taylor.
Here.
Thorslin.
Here.
Vanish Theranot.
Here.
And Patterson.
Here.
Okay, there is a quorum and the meeting is called to order. The prayer for tonight is from Patrick Corrick Hinton. God of joy, thank you for the gift of a good laugh. Like music and love, it speaks to all languages and has healing power all its own. Help us to remember there is nothing life-giving about being gloomy. Let our belief in you and our trust in your care be so complete that our joy will be the sure sign of your presence in this world that needs you so much. Amen. Rise for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk read the notice of the meeting, please?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on March 24th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. in the Shields Carter Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Okay, thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. I would like to mention that there was a typo on consent agenda item 3B, which is the appointment for Nolan Herbert to the ZBA. The ending date for that appointment should read 11/30/2023, not 2022. Mr. Esri?
Move to approve as presented with the correction you just made.
Okay, thank you. Second by Kyle. Any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Date and time of our next regular meetings are noted in your agenda. County Facilities, Environment and Land Use, Highway and Transportation, Committee of the Whole, and the regular board meetings will all be held as scheduled in April. Public participation tonight. I don't believe we have any public. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public participation. Next, we have a rededication of the Shields Carter Meeting Room, and I think Kyle has something to read for that.
All right. Going to do these one after the other, I suppose. Starting with Mr. Shields. Lyle Shields was sworn in as a county board member in 1961. Lyle Shields admirably served the citizens of Champaign County with his full commitment and his responsibilities as a representative of the Champaign County Board District 1 to work in partnership with fellow county board members and officials of Champaign County, and with his full commitment, service, and dedication to the best interests of all people of Champaign County until November 19th, 2002. The County Board of Champaign County seeks to permanently publicly recognize the commitment and dedication of Lyle Shields, who diligently served the citizens of Champaign County as an elected official over a term of 4 decades. Lloyd Carter represented the people of Champaign County from 1992 to 2016. During his tenure as a Champaign County board member, he served on the following standing committees: Justice, Public Safety, Environment and Land Use, Highway and Transportation, and Justice and Social Services. And during his tenure as a county board member, Lloyd Carter Jr. also served as liaison positions as the county board's representative at the Regional Planning Commission, Cooperative Extension Board, Martin Luther King Committee, and Veterans Assistance Commission. Whereas Lloyd Carter was a dedicated military veteran in the service of the United States Navy, and is he was also he received the Good Conduct Medal and the Korean Service Medal and 2 battle stars for his service from 1950 to 1955. Lloyd Carter brought respect, honor, and integrity to the people of Champaign County with his public service of over 35 years. Now therefore be it resolved by the County Board of Champaign County that the County Board Meeting Room 1, located at the Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, is hereby named the Shields Carter Meeting Room in honor of Lloyd Carter and Lyle Shields.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And you'll notice that we finally were able to put up the pictures in the back, and the name of the room change has been labeled on all the doors to the room and back there where you guys had your picture taken this evening. So a great rededication of this room. Finally, we're able to do that. Next, we will have our Bakertilly audit report. And George, do you want to introduce your outside auditor?
Hi, Michael Malott is the senior manager assigned to the audit of the County of Champaign's financial statements.
Thanks, George, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Hopefully this will go a little better than my efforts last year remotely that Orion reminded me of before I got here. First, before I start, I just want to thank George and Orion, as well as CJ and a number of other people throughout the county. There was a lot of effort on their part to get the financial information into the shape needed for us to do our audit. We can't really do our audit without the numbers, and they've had to do a lot of work to get the numbers where it was possible for us to do our audit in unusual times, both through the remote environment with COVID, through some really complex new audit standards, accounting standards that they needed to account for, which were really impactful to the county's financial results, and a lot of different changes in terms of what had to happen and be accounted for during the year. So first, I want to thank them for the efforts they put in to get things ready for us. What I'm going to go over is a brief overview of just the various opinions and results from the financial audit for 2020. First, the large document, which is the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It's a summation of the entire county's financial results for the year. We did provide what's called an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance we can provide. It doesn't mean we look at every dollar and every penny, but it means that the information in there is presented in as accurate a position for the users to make an informed decision as to the financial health of the county. It's not, an unmodified opinion is not a guarantee. It's not a rubber stamp. It's something we beat up those numbers a lot to ensure that they're as accurate as possible. In the report, it's a large document. The information is prepared by your auditor's office and is the results. It's the county's information. It's the county's report. The only wording in there that comes from us as the auditors is that 3-page opinion that is in there. Everything else is your information. It's a large report, so if you want to get a distillation of what's happened, I always recommend reading the management's discussion and analysis. It's essentially a summarization of the key factors that impacted the year that's being audited. Additionally, if you're looking to see where things are going, the statistical information section is essentially a number of schedules that give you trend data for about a 10-year period. So it's good to kind of see where things have been going, where they're trending to. It gives you kind of a look back to see how things in the current year compare to years in the past. One big thing you'll notice if you looked at prior reports and you look at the 2020 report is that there was a new standard that essentially impacted how certain funds of the county are presented. Essentially, there's a lot of funds that you, like every county in Illinois, essentially administers in a fiduciary capacity. Essentially, you're holding other people's money for them, whether it's property tax collections, circuit clerk fees, and things like that, and a number of other things. A new accounting standard came out, changed basically everything we needed to do with it. In the past, it was essentially, here's where the money is at year end. That's what the auditors audit. Where is that cash position, more or less? Now they're required to present a complete set of financial statements. So it's not just of the cash balances at year end, but what happened during the year. What money was collected, what money went out, where did it go, is it accounted and reported correctly? For counties, massive undertaking, really complicated for them to get that information in a format that was never required before. So it is a change. I think you as the board probably should have to take more comfort in the that there's a greater level of detail and work that was required to be done on those now that we're required to give an opinion on that. So that was always a bit of a gap, I would say, in the auditing standards in the past and the reporting standards, and they kind of closed that gap by requiring the new presentation, which required us to do more work and really kind of get into the weeds on those areas that we hadn't before. So that was a big thing we worked through this year. It is different. It'll be something going forward that will be not insubstantial part of what the audit will be. I won't go over any specific key things in the financial statements, but really those are the big changes and the big things to be concerned about there. While the financial statements themselves are your report, there's I'd say a tandem report that we issue that's our report. It's called the Audit Results Letter. Essentially, it is a summary of a number of different required communications from us as the auditors as to what we observed during the year. It lays out a lot of things like what's our responsibility, what is management responsibility, what did we look at, what are the big key areas. Also rates anything we saw related to things like control issues that we identified and communicate in there, as well as any of the results we saw in terms of anything we're worried about, any disagreements with management, anything like that. While we did communicate some control findings that are consistent with the previous audit, I think when the management responses in there, those should be alleviated in the 2021 audit. So hopefully those will go away going forward. And additionally, with the implementation of new ERP will address some of the other items we identified in the past. In terms of completing the audit and we working with management, we have no disagreements with them, and we found that the numbers in the end were accurate and allowed us to give our opinion we have provided. So in addition to the financial statements, we also do a deep dive into your federal funding and your spending for this what's called the Single Audit, and that's in the back of the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. This year, we looked at a lot of programs. We looked at 5 of your major programs, which is a lot more than normal. So the programs we looked at were the workforce programs, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the federal grants for the Rural Transportation Grant, essentially, your Community Services Block Grant, and Head Start, which we look at every year. We looked at a lot. So there was a great deal there, and the good thing to report is that we had no findings on those programs themselves. So they have been run cleanly and in accordance with all the federal guidelines and mandates. So that's something that, given how many programs we looked at, is something that you can tip your cap to, because we find stuff all the time in those programs. In addition, there were some other reports we issued related to the GIS Consortium. We issued the financial statements there, and also the circuit clerk has their own separate financial audit, which had to follow the new accounting standards I mentioned before. Additionally, with the circuit clerk, we have to do a lot of compliance work associated with what the AOIC requires them to do in terms of the collection and disbursement and the administration of funds that they're mandated by law to basically administer. So, and we were able to complete those audits and provide clean opinions on both of those reports as well. So that's kind of the whole scope of what we do. There's also one final regulatory report we'll be working with George and Orion to issue shortly related to some of the state compliance requirements. It's relatively minor, but it's usually the last piece of the pie that we take care of. So after that, we'll be completed and can close the door on the 2020 audit and move forward to 2021. So with that, if anybody have any questions.
One of the questions I have, I noticed that in the single audit, one of your findings was on tax collection, and particularly that there wasn't a separation of duties. Yep. Do you see that in other counties? I guess what my question is our treasurer's office, which performs that duty, staffed in a level that is similar to other counties? Do they also do that, or is our structure more collapsed than what you typically see?
I think we do see it fairly commonly. Segregation of responsibilities is a struggle point at really all municipalities of all sizes. It's just the nature of the beast. You guys have to be cognizant of the limited resources, the limited people you have at your disposal. So when I talk about when you have these control findings, They're not necessarily something done wrong. It's simply a gap in the best practices, and sometimes you just have to get things finished. And I think the segregation of duties ones, I think, would fall into making the best of what you can do, yet we're still obligated from a unlimited resources, unlimited people vantage point, aka Dreamland, that's where we have to come from. That's the requirement. So we have to communicate that, even if from a practicality standpoint, it's not doable in the current state. And it's not uncommon to see that.
Any other questions? Mr. Williams?
What was the materiality threshold for this audit?
So I'm technically not allowed by the audit standards to give you actual numbers. I can't even tell George that. To give you a high level, we calculate it's governed by various requirements in the audit standards. Each column in the report has its own separate thresholds we abide by, and it's based on the volume and dollar value of activity there. So a smaller fund will be looked at with a much smaller dollar value than a large fund.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you for coming.
Right, thank you very
and telling
much, everybody.
us our report. Yes. Thank you, George. Thank you. And Orion is here this evening too. Thank you for your work on that. And I see CJ's over there as well. Thank you. Also, just to note, all of our larger grants generally run through the Regional Planning Commission, so nobody's here tonight to hear the report from them, but I'll make sure they get a copy of, they are aware that we're grateful for their compliance with the rules as well, because that was the 5 big programs that they audited. Okay, great. Okay, moving down to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Pardon? Yeah.
So moved.
Go ahead, Mr. Esri.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Mr. Williams. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Roll call.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's roll call. Yep.
Williams,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Coert,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
Yes.
Yes.
Goss,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Lokshin,
Yes.
McGuire,
Yes.
Michaels,
Yes.
Pasalacqua, Paul,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Straub,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Vantage Theranot,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next is communications from the board. If anyone has communications about business of the board, please, this would be the time. Mr. Goss?
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge that County Board Member Harper was named as News Gazette 2021 Farm Leader of the Year.
And I brought the article tonight if anybody wants to see. He's got a whole section of the newspaper. Mr. Esri?
I was just make mention that the 2 newest members of the ZBA, as of just a few minutes ago, Mr. Nolan Herbert and Mr. Thaddeus Bates, are in the audience tonight.
Thank you for coming this evening. Anything else? Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted everybody to know that the low barrier homeless shelter from which we put some of our funds in is going to be closing April 15th. As we all know, in central Illinois, there's not really a mild season. We have very severe weather all year round. And so as we continue, I hope that we and other local bodies of government can continue to come together and to serve those populations. And it's something I was really proud of when we did it a couple months ago, and I hope to see us working together again.
Any other communication from the board? Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from February 24th, 2022? Ms.
So
Lokshin.
moved. Lokshin.
Thank you.
Second, Michaels.
Ms. Michaels. Any discussion on the minutes? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next are the summaries of action taken at the County Facilities Meeting, March 8th, 2022, the Environment and Land Use Committee, March 10th, 2022, and the March 11th, 2022 Highway and Transportation Committee. They're all received and placed on file. Next is the summary of action taken on March 15th, 2022 at the Committee of the Whole is received and placed on file. And now we're down to new business. Item A is an auditor office item, and the auditor is here tonight if there are questions. Can I get a motion for item A?
So moved.
Sorry, Ms. King? Second, Mr. Patterson? Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're whipping through this agenda. Next is other business. Next we have the Litigation Committee. Eric, would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for adoption of Resolution 2022-55, Administrator's full and final release of all claims to include attorney's fees, costs, and expenses. This has been distributed.
Okay, Mr. Patterson seconding.
Yeah, and just to state, I talked to the caucus leader for the GOP and the Dem caucus leader, and we have no reason to discuss it tonight, and I don't think we'll need to go into closed session.
Okay, thank you. Then I guess we can go ahead and vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the American Rescue Plan Act item, and I'd like to get a motion for resolution number 202256, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for geophysical mapping of the Mahomet Aquifer between the County of Champaign and the University of Illinois Prairie Research Institute. Can I get a motion, Mr. Storr? Second, Ms. Taylor? Any discussion on this IGA? This was a proposal that was approved by the board to accomplish through our ARPA funds. Ms. King?
I'd just like to thank Mr. Storr for all the work he put into working with the Illinois Geological Survey to get this agreement done.
Anything else? Seeing none, those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Can I get a motion for adoption of resolution number 2022-57, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for rural housing rehabilitation assistance between the County of Champaign and the Central Illinois Land Bank Authority?
So moved, Michaels.
Ms. Michaels? Ms. Lakshan?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on this item, which was also approved to move forward within our ARPA funding?
Yeah, I had a question for how, if this could violate any sort, or how we're going to decide who does the work and the vetting on that, or whether or not there's prevailing wage, since it's federal funds. I don't know if someone could speak better to that. Because I know for solar, I try to do solar installation with federal money, and then since I was non-union, I had to pay prevailing wage. I didn't. Is this fall under those sort of same things?
So we followed, when Kathy worked out the contract with the land bank, we used the same criteria that were used for HUD rehabilitation programs. So it pretty much mirrors that, correct, Kathy? It pretty much mirrors the HUD requirements. Okay. Ms. Furtado.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. If you read the ARPA rules, it really clearly states in multiple places that Davis-Bacon is attached, but I mean, it's federal money, so you're right. That's important. I do want to, I support this. I do want to mention, and we had talked about this previously, and in sort of the summary, if you recall back to when we all had that meeting and we broke things down into categories, the original intention for this was to give $250,000 from the 2022 allocation and then $250,000 from the 2023 allocation, which we talked about extensively. It was in the chart. I'm not entirely sure how it just ended up being $500,000. That said, in that pot of money that we had this year, we'd only allocated $150,000 for CU at Home. And it doesn't seem as if the other pieces of the housing project are going in any sort of expeditious manner. So I think that that's fine in terms of that. But I do want to just recognize that, like, the intention of the board is pretty clearly spelled out with the allocations for each year. And this was not what, I mean, this was the total amount that we talked about. But for this year, what we had talked about was $250,000. And once money is encumbered, it's encumbered, right? And so that kind of frustrates me, but I definitely support $500,000 for this project. I thought when he came and presented it was spot on, and keeping people in their homes should be something that we're really concerned about. So for all those reasons, I say let's just go ahead and vote on it. But those kind of details, I do think they matter.
So the way the contract is written is that the money will be distributed over time. Of course, it could all potentially be distributed this year.
But correct me if I'm wrong, we have to encumber it. Like, if we pass this, or am I wrong about that? Like, once the money is encumbered, it's encumbered.
No, we're signing a contract, basically. The contract is based, I mean, it could be potentially, Kathy, do you want to talk about, is this monthly payments or quarterly payments? Or what? How did we end up? I think it's over a period of time that goes into next year. The contract covers that much time.
Yes, we did break it up into payments. The $500,000 was in the budget for this year, and so that was one of the reasons why we included that total. And I wasn't aware that it was, $250,000 per year. If that's something you guys would like changed. But we did break it up into payments so that once they're ready with committed projects, we would have those payments available for them. Let me see. Yeah, they would just need to have the commitments, proof of the commitments and the contracts that would be ready for these houses, and all the documentation showing that. So. And then the only breakdown that we specified was, 15% maximum for admin.
So potentially it could all be spent in 22. It is in the budget for that amount, but if you want to make that a change and put half of it this year, half of it next year, we can do that. That's Ms. Michaels.
I would be happy to amend the motion, since I made the motion, to use the $250,000 on this year and then the other $250,000. I think one of the things that we all need to be aware of is the receipt of the second batch of money. And so I think that if that is where we were, then let's do the $250,000, and then we can always do the additional $250,000 when we receive the second portion. So I am willing to amend my motion to $250,000 versus $500,000 if the second would want to do so also.
Yes, I would agree.
So who did the second?
I did.
I think was
Lokshin did,
Lokshin,
and I
that's
would
what-
agree
okay,
to
you're
that
fine
as well.
with that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Friendly amendment to amend the amount to $250,000 instead of $500,000, with the intention that we would bring back a extension of this contract for next year. Okay. Any other discussion? Sorry, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea too. Stephanie, I guess, brought up See-You at Home, and I assume next year we'll need a low barrier homeless shelter also. So it'd be good to have the money available.
Okay. Anything else?
And just to confirm, like, the intention has always been to do $500,000 total. The same thing. The intention was to do $500,000 for immigrant services. We allocated $1 million for housing this year, with the understanding that we have this project, but we might have other projects as well. For example, the See You at Home. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying we're not going to do the $500,000. And in the conversations that we had, there had been some concern, could they even spend $500,000 this year? And having that sort of liquidity in case there's other things that we want to do, I think is important for 2022. And like Diane says, I'm not counting that second check until it gets here in June.
Okay, anything further? Okay, looks like we're ready to vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries with the changed amount to $250,000. Okay. Next, we have our discussion items. And so Kathy, do you want to go ahead and talk about the items on the agenda under your subject?
Yeah, as far as an update, I know there were 2 requests for funding included in the packets, one for Crime Stoppers and one for the Village of Mahomet. Okay.
Hi, Tim Dittman. Some of you may know me from my other life, but I'm here as a board member of Crime Stoppers. I don't have any formal presentation. I think the item in your packet spells it out pretty clearly. I will make one correction to that letter, though. When it talks about a $5,000 reward for a gun homicide, we've broadened that to any homicide, recognizing that any homicide in this community is significant. So as of right now, a gun felony is a $2,500 reward, up from $1,000, and an homicide would be $5,000, and that's a tip that leads to an arrest. And so we're just looking to get some ARPA funds to kind of continue that reward structure in perpetuity. We think upping those amounts will lead more people to come forward and get more criminals off the streets.
Mr. Patterson.
Tim, thanks for coming here tonight. I'm pretty supportive of this proposal. One question we had in our caucus is kind of looking at what's happened in the past, because you listed some stats over the past 3 years. How did you guys come with the 150 number?
That would probably be a better question for our board leadership. I know John Hecker and Don Trimble were the one who formulated this letter. I can pass that along to them. I know our ask from the city of Champaign was $100,000, and that was thankfully approved. So I would presume that we asking the county for something in the same ballpark.
Okay. And I mean, especially considering that you guys for the same program are getting 100 from Champaign. I wouldn't mind spending $150,000 on this. I guess my just fear is that if it doesn't get spent by the end of 2024, that's money that's going back to the feds. So I think it might be more responsible for us to give a portion, and then if more is needed, to move forward with that down the road.
And I believe that's how Champaign is doing it. I don't believe they're giving it to us all up front. And we are aware of that spending deadline, so yeah.
All right, thanks for coming out.
Any other discussion? Ms. Carter, is your hand up? Okay, Mr. Williams.
Oh, I'll defer to you.
Mr. Williams, you have the floor.
I wasn't aware that you asked the city of Champaign for money. Since they approve money, do you already have the funds to go up to 25 and 5,000, or do you need our contribution to get to 25 and 5,000?
No, we've already made the change. That was effective, I believe, a couple weeks ago. So going forward, any tips, again, related to either a gun, felony, or a homicide fall under that new reward structure. And we have a board meeting next week where we could potentially approve some of those amounts. But at this point, it's just a matter of reaching out to local governments, including Champaign County, to see if we can procure funding to extend this new structure in perpetuity. The longer we can do it, the better.
One concern that I have is I would like to know where the 25 and 5,000 came from. Like, who is out there that's not going to report a crime where the extra $4,000 or $1,500 makes a difference? I'm concerned that maybe the reward should be higher as opposed to where they are.
And that's certainly something to consider. I mean, we landed on the 2,500 and the 5,000 after a lot of discussion among our board. We thought that that was a good kind of jump. I know, and I believe it's detailed in here, that Crime Stoppers in Omaha, Nebraska increased their funds with a little Buffett money, if I'm being honest, to like high. I want to say it's somewhere around like 10, 50,000. I mean, I don't have the exact number, but it was astronomically high. You know, if you give a tip on a murder and it pays off with an arrest, you could walk away with a good chunk of change. We realize that we can't go there right now, we meaning Crime Stoppers, but those were just the numbers that we decided on. It could go back for discussion, and if we feel it's working, we could, maybe say a murder tip is $7,500, just throwing that out there as a possibility.
I mean, I would be interested in knowing how much additional would you need from us or period to make those type of jumps.
I can take that back to my board leadership and get you an answer on that.
Ms. Carter.
So we have a lot of unsolved murders here in Champaign County. The reason why they haven't come forward before, I think that the money isn't enough. You look at the cost of living. Say for instance, if I want to give a tip and then move, that's not enough money for me to move with. So I would definitely be in favor with Wayne. If you want to solve some of these murders, you need to up that reward money. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Thorson.
Yeah, I am on board with this kind of incentive program. What I would like to know, if you have time to get this from your board, is you cited Omaha, Nebraska. Did it work? Did reporting go up? Was it helpful when they raised it to the astronomical fee? If we offer more reward, and as Samantha says, maybe it's not enough, is it going to change somebody's mind? So it sounds like we have, if you know how long this program in Omaha has had more money to incentivize people reporting things, was there a change, a significant change in it? So if you have someone on the board that's able to get a hold of that data and bring it back to us, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I can ask for that information. I mean, I do know when we announced our illegal gun bounty program, which is on page 1 of our letter to you, that did yield some pretty good results. I mean, 42 arrests and 55 guns off the streets in this county alone. So it seems like in general, upping rewards is yielding results, but I can see about getting some Omaha numbers for you.
Just an idea.
Jacob, I'm sorry, are you talking?
You're fine. Is there any way that we could use those arrests from tips as a way to be preventative with gun violence and crimes, to show that, hey, there is community support because this many people tell? Because my question with Omaha is too, then if you're going to shoot somebody and then your neighbor's going to get $100,000, you're probably less likely to shoot somebody in like the long range of thinking about it, of likelihood of being caught. Because I know crime exists on the south side of Chicago because people don't tell. Sure. So if people know they're going to tell, is there any way you could advertise like, well, because of tips, we were able to do this, so then we could start seeing, instead of getting after crime after it happened, maybe use it to get ahead of, use these stats to get ahead of gun violence?
I mean, we try as often as possible to publicize our success stories. If I think I'm understanding your question correctly. It's difficult because we have to maintain the anonymity of the people. We can't, for example, put out a Facebook post on our Facebook page that says, a Champaign resident gave us a tip that led to the arrest of John Smith. Well, you're going to be able to figure out, you're going to be able to put the pieces together and figure out who that is. So yes, we try to publicize our success stories as much as possible while trying to maintain that anonymity. I do know that we did have 2 tips recently before this new reward structure was announced. They were, I believe, at last month's meeting. They were 2 murder cases, anonymous tips, and 2 murder suspects were put behind bars due to anonymous tips. And that was, I hate to use the word incredible, but it was incredible. I mean, we were really happy that Crime Stoppers paid off in those 2 instances. But yeah, I understand your concern.
Ms. Furtado.
So just from a logistical standpoint, it seems as if there's a broad consensus on the board to move forward with this. I think $150,000 price tag as a total project seems completely reasonable. However, I do agree with Kyle that just like Champaign did, probably spreading it out. And I've heard you say perpetuity a few times. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware. We got to spend this money by 2024. So for 2 reasons, spreading it out over the different years I think is important. In part because that allows us to check back in and see if we need to maybe put additional funding into this, but also to make sure that the money is being spent down just because we don't want to get into a situation, what I said in our caucus is we're at year 23 and a half, and we find out there's $80,000 over there, and oh no, they got to give it back to us, and we got to figure out how to spend it, right? So I think if you all, Kathy and Darlene, if you could structure it over 3 years, so if it's like 50, 50, 50, or 75, 75, and then we revisit it and see if we want more. And then I also think, as finance chair, that this would come from the criminal violence, the community violence prevention line that we have, and we haven't tapped into that at all yet. And I believe we have $1 million from this year. So does that seem like and then to everybody's point, if we want to revisit the dollar amounts and potentially increase them, I leave that to y'all in your discussions, then you could bring back, the final, but it seems as if like what you're trying to get right now is green light, red light, yellow light. I think we're green light.
I'll just add that if you're concerned about that, another way to do it would be a reimbursement model. We spend our money on a reward because we have community donations that, we're a nonprofit. Our livelihood is on community donations. And so, we have some money in the bank right now aside from the ARPA money. And so it could be a situation where we pay out a reward and then request reimbursement for the county. So that might allay some of the concerns about having money in the bank that doesn't get spent by 2024.
Just to respond to that, we want to make sure that y'all have the liquidity that you need.
Sure.
And from our side, just to be real honest, once it's encumbered, if the money's in your bank account and our bank account, it kind of doesn't matter that much because it's encumbered. We couldn't spend it on something else. So like once the agreement's in place, that money's locked
Sure.
into that project. So I think actually structuring it out over the years makes a lot of sense. With, the understanding if you run out, you can always come back. Yeah.
Any other questions? Mr. McGuire.
All right, comment. I agree with all of it except not the 150. Splitting it up between the 3 years. I think it's counterproductive because their board should be able to make the changes like Wayne talked about, or move things forward. And I think they should have the money. And I think if there's a question of whether they're going to be able to spend it by 2024, then we can deal with that in a year or so. But from now, when there seems to be more issues of gun violence in the community, I think they should start out with, as you said, more liquidity rather than limited them to $50,000 for the first year. So I think you should give them the whole $150,000.
Well, as Stephanie mentioned, the money can be committed out of the money that's been budgeted for this year, and then I can sit down with their director and figure out the best way to do that, what they think would work, if that's fine with everybody. Ms. Lakshan.
I think that's a fair point. I think they do need the money, but I also wanted to remind everybody that we're not the sole funders of the organization. They, as Mr. Dittman said, have donation money already in their bank accounts, and the city of Champaign is committed to the program too. So I think spreading it out, and reminder that also it's a discussion item. We're not voting on this tonight, but spreading it out makes sense to me.
Ms. Carter.
I got one more question.
Sure.
Right now, in place, do you have any resources that would help someone that reports a crime, and if they wanted to move, do you have additional funds that would help them relocate to another area by any chance? I see Urbana has incorporated a program to do so.
I don't believe that's part of our portfolio, no. We're strictly about receiving tips. And when I say we, they actually go to a third party. So Crime Stoppers Board doesn't get the tips. Law enforcement initially doesn't get the tips. That's the whole part of the whole anonymity process, is they're answered by a third-party service, and that information ultimately gets relayed to law enforcement. That's a long way of answering your question, but no, that's not something that's in our portfolio.
Is that something that you would consider adding?
I can take it to our board. I mean, like I said, we have a board meeting next week, and I'm taking notes here, so.
I just want to talk to you about 3 incidences that have happened in Champaign-Urbana. The mothers I've known, and they've had to relocate with no funds, no help, and it's hard. So I think that if you want to solve some of these crimes, you have to help, the person that's coming forward, because at that point, they may, just be at at a point where they don't feel safe here anymore after they've reported the crime. And so I would think that it would be helpful to help them relocate to another area. So just thinking of ideas to help, because there are a lot of unsolved murders here in Champaign County, and I just hope that they do get solved so that their family can seek some justice.
And I will note that there aren't, when someone picks up reward money, there aren't any restrictions on it. I mean, it's theirs. They can spend it however they want. I completely understand and agree with your point that relocation services are a big deal. I've talked with Julia Reitz about that several times. But you know, let's say someone picks up a $5,000 reward. If they want to use that to relocate, nothing stops them from doing it. Once they have the money, it's their money.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
I just want to reiterate, I would like to see bigger rewards. If that means more money, I'd be fine with that. You know, there are instances where there's only one witness, so there's no such thing as an anonymous tip, right? So I want to see this program successful. I want to see this program successful, but I do think it will require larger rewards. And so I would like to get more information about that. And I personally wouldn't have a problem if that costs more money, though I'm one of 22. I would hope more people would agree with me if it would reap tangible benefits. I would like to hear more about what's happening in Omaha.
Yeah, I can see about getting that information.
Okay, Mr. Goss.
Yeah, quickly, I would like to reiterate some of what Stephanie said, that if you bring us back results that raising it to a certain amount and you need more funding, I think you should be back here so we can make that happen. Sure. Because we all want crime solved. I mean, we want this to be a safe community where for each and every single person. So if you need more money before 2024, the sooner that you get your rewards up and you start to see results, don't be bashful to come in and in public comment tell us results, or ask Kyle or ask Darlene to be put on the agenda to give us an update. Because as much as we try to pay attention to what we hear, we're probably not going to hear enough about it. We're probably going to need to hear from you all again. So sure.
I feel like that I definitely support this as well, and especially since you guys have been doing this for years already, and we know that it works. Yes, if together we can collectively make it work better, then I think it's a win for the whole community. So, yes, I support this very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So sort of hearing everybody and what everybody said, what if we did $100 grand this year with the intention to do $100 grand next year? And that way that can get us closer to what Wayne is talking about with the more money, get us closer to what Jim is talking about, making sure that they've got the money to run, but also probably what Jim and I care about the most is that there's just not money sitting in a pot somewhere that later on, because this is something I worry about just across the board with this ARPA money, is like, what does it look like in, you know, at this meeting in 2023 when we're like coming to Kathy and saying like, all right, we need a plan to spend $90 million quick, right? So does that seem reasonable? Okay.
Okay, any further comments or discussion? Great, thank you for coming tonight, Tim. Okay, Kathy, do you want to go back to your report?
Thanks. We included a memo in here with an update overview of where we're at with some of these projects. I did want to note that the Department of Treasury at the end of February.
Hold on a second. Yeah. I think there's questions.
Yeah.
We did not get any further information about the camera system that Muhammad requested, other than to say they were interested in having the county. They heard we had interest in partnering with law enforcement, crime prevention types of things, and so they sent that request down. I don't have any further information about that one. Go ahead, Kathy, sorry.
Okay. Regarding the reporting, we'll have our next quarterly report due at the end of April, and the Department of Treasury did change many of the numerical reporting categories. So some of the categories that we originally predicted will need reassigned for reporting purposes. And then the reporting portal is not available to look at this next report template yet. So hopefully in the next few weeks, they'll make that available so we can start looking at any changes since the last report. As we keep moving forward, of course, we'll have more projects to report on. And I do want to mention any of the financials that we include in here and also for the reports will reflect what has cleared the auditor's financial statements as far as expenditures. And then other updates, we're working on these contracts and payments and the department expenditures as well and processing various different phases of each of these. And as I've seen tonight, we have the 2 new intergovernmental agreements to process as well. And then currently we're in discussion with the immigrant service organizations. We had sent them a draft agreement a couple weeks ago, and so we're just waiting for their feedback before moving forward. We also have a draft agreement with RPC in the works for the housing assistance services, and so that would plan to come back in April for the budget amendment. Those are the major updates I wanted to highlight tonight. We've included 2 different timelines in case one is more helpful for you to look at. And then we'll keep building on the expenditures to date as they show up in the financials.
Just real quick, on the memo, I saw that Sangamon Valley is both it's being in progress and in the negotiation stage. Which one is it?
Yes, so that currently is in process of getting the signature from their district, and then we would get the paperwork to process the first payment.
And what is the status with the immigrant services? Is that executed?
It's in their hands. So we sent the draft to them for possible signature. It was ready for our signature, and I think Darlene might have even signed it. On
our side, we're just waiting for signatures on the other side for both of those 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else for Kathy? Mr. Patterson?
Kathy, I just want to thank you for your role you've played with this project. I mean, this is a really historic amount of money that's coming to the county, and I'm sure you're playing it by the edge of your seat and doing something new every day, and that's not always the most comfortable work environment. So I just really want to thank you for being able to, adapt and, respond to our very diverse needs.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for coming tonight. All right, we are now down to item B, which is the proposal from Clark Lindsay Village, and we have folks here tonight to talk with us about their proposal. Sean Flynn, Deb Rearndez, and Brandy Richardson.
Hi, good evening. Can everybody hear me? Great. Thank you all for your time this evening. We really appreciate it. It's come to my understanding that everybody has some of the education materials that we compiled and drafted. Well, thank you to whomever gave those to the board. This evening, we're going to spend some time to introduce a project. There's no immediate action needed, but we will need subsequent action at some further point in the future. This project is assisted living and memory care project at Clark Lindsay Village, which is a local not-for-profit. It's a senior living provider that is a pillar in this community. Just a couple of highlights before I turn this over to Deb so she can give a little bit more background on Clark Lindsay Village and what it does for the county and the local immediate area. This financing will be done with tax-exempt proceeds via a conduit vehicle. There is no financial obligation from the county for this particular financing. It benefits Clark Lindsay in the sense they get tax-exempt financing. Additionally, it's been brought to our attention that prevailing wage has been something that's at the forefront of the minds of the members of the board. Everybody on this site will be making at or above the prevailing wage for the county of Champaign. We can address these individual topics and subjects later, but I will turn this over to Deb Rearndez to give a little bit of background about Clark Lindsay Village.
Thanks, Brady.
As many of you probably know, Clark Lindsay's been in the community for over 40 years now, and we are a not-for-profit serving seniors. I know you have the material in front of you, so I'm not going to read off of the PowerPoint here, but I do want to emphasize that we are the county's only continuum of care, offering all levels of care on our campus. And this expansion project in the assisted living helps us live out our values to embrace the mind, spirit, and body so that our older adults can live their best lives possible. Assisted living, we do have some on our campus. This will allow us to offer more and be able to allow our residents to age in place in the level of care they wish to. We are doing a little bit of swapping. There's a unit count on slide 6 that shows our current campus. As if you walk through Meadowbrook Park, you know we're already constructing some of our villas. And this work will happen just off of Ray Street where there are some garages placed. So we'll be maintaining our green space that you might see from the park. And at the end, we'll have fewer skilled beds, but more assisted living beds, and it all comes out to about the same number of residents serving on our campus. This bond issuance is a combination of refinancing of existing bonds and also the new construction related to the assisted living and the villas. So I am going to hand it over to Sean Flynn, who is our bond counsel and can explain how this works as a conduit.
Hi, good evening. Step said, my name is Sean Flynn. I'm with the law firm Gilmore & Bell, and I'm a bond attorney, so it'll be my responsibility to draft the bond documents. And I just want to assure you, as Brady said, that there will be no liability, no funds of the county will be at stake in this financing. Bondholders will only have the right to look at Clark Lindsay for repayment of the bonds. And as Brady said, the reason why Clark Lindsay needs your assistance is to be able to finance their projects on a tax-exempt basis. Much like the county finances your own projects on a tax-exempt basis, the federal government allows certain organizations to finance their projects on a tax-exempt basis, and that includes 501c3 nonprofits. And the way the federal government sets up that tax-exempt program is it requires them to issue bonds through a local government entity. And the General Assembly has given the county the ability to issue bonds on behalf of nonprofits, and they give you that right to help to alleviate the unemployment in your area and promote economic development within your area, which is why you've given those powers. And the way the bonds would work is you would sell bonds, and as I said, bondholders can only look to Clark Lindsay for repayment of the bonds, so you will loan those bond proceeds to Clark Lindsay in exchange for them taking on full obligation of those bonds.
Okay, so for community impact, this was a good exercise to put together some numbers for you, and a lot of people are surprised to find out how big Clark Lindsay is. So just a few things to highlight. We do employ 260 employees. 88% of those live here in Champaign County, and others commute from close by. In addition to our paid employees, we have a very robust internship program and retain many of those interns along the way as well. And we are clinical sites to many of the CNA and nursing programs in the area. As a provider, most of our residents are age 80 to 100, and most of those come from Champaign County. Or our parents moving to live closer to their adult children who live in Champaign County. And we do, again, want to emphasize, we do provide a full continuum of care. As a community partner, we're involved in many communities supporting them throughout, even for older adults who don't live at Clark Lindsay. And those are listed as on slide 11. And then just wanted to emphasize, while we have no formal relationship with the University of Illinois, it is an important partner to us in terms of recruitment in programs that we do in research with them, alongside them, and also in the residents we serve.
do you want to go over the impact, or do you want me to take that, Brady? Okay, why don't you?
So we'll try to be concise here, but in the project scope to have 135 workers come in and have construction or laborers, various laborers on site. As you're well aware, the economic impact of that would be immediate. Paychecks to those who would be getting lunches, to be filling up their fuel, and spending time around town. And those who may be employed, who are also residents of the county, and a stable paycheck may entice them to purchase real estate, etc. And within the county recordation taxes, but also fuel additional economic impact via wealth managers, real estate agents, etc. It's just a high level to understand what the project's doing. This is not introducing school children. This project does not give financial liability to the county whatsoever. The county's acting as a conduit. It's serving a vulnerable population of seniors and allowing them to age in place in dignity, but also in a non-for-profit setting where the money is not filtered elsewhere to investors. It stays within the organization and helps drive the mission of Clark Lindsey. You'll see throughout the packet that Clark Lindsey gives back to the community fairly frequently, which is typical of a not-for-profit. So what we want to gauge is county to understand, one, that Clark Lindsey has been a longtime partner of the local area. Two, this will have an impact for those in the local area. And three, it's another chance for Clark Lindsey to continue to reposition itself. Oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't on. Did everybody hear what I was? Okay, perfect. But also, as a not-for-profit, able to position itself to be competitive within the market, but again, as a not-for-profit for the money organization. We'll open it up to any questions if anybody has any questions.
Mr. Williams?
What stage are you in the project right now?
So we're pretty far along the project. The project has a few phases. One of the phases is under construction now. We look to get a timetable to begin constructing in about July. So we would look to finance this likely in June is what we're looking.
How many Medicaid patients do you have at Clark Lindsey?
We are not certified for Medicaid at Clark Lindsey.
After the project, do you expect to be?
No, we don't.
Oh, I have more questions. Of the employees that are at Clark Lindsey, how many are subject to a collective bargaining agreement?
None.
I understand that you did something similar with the city of Urbana some time ago. Why didn't you go back to them to do this project?
So whenever a city issues bonds, they have the ability to designate bonds as bank qualified. And when you designate bonds as bank qualified, you can't issue more than $10 million of bonds. And that was the first question we had asked the county executive when we spoke with her a week or two ago was, is the county going to do a bond issue of less than $10 million this year? And what we were told was the answer was no. If the county was to undertake any bond issue, it would be over $10 million. And so the city of Urbana plans to issue less than $10 million of bonds this year, designate them bank qualified, which means they cannot serve as an issuer to Clark Lindsey.
How much do you expect to save if we were to approve this?
It can be quite significant. The easiest way to explain this is 501c3s that issue through conduits automatically have a federal, investors have a federal exemption on the interest, right, which then is passed down to the borrower. This would allow Clark Lindsey to access the state exemption of Illinois. So investors, so anybody in the community that would want to buy the bonds, they would have a tax exemption from the federal level as well as the state level on those interest payments. So Clark Lindsey would get what's called a double exemption. That can be upwards to 50 basis points, which on $50 million over 35 years is pretty significant.
About how much?
I can't do that off the top of my
Okay.
head.
All right, that's
So
fair.
you would think it'd be 1% on 50 million, which is 500,000. So it'd be 500,000 over 30 to 35 years, which would be $15 million in interest payments, right? Or half that. If it's 1 point, it'd be that much. It'd be half that if it was 50 basis points.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter.
Have you ever accepted Medicaid?
No, we haven't. In anticipation of your question, why, is we are a life plan community, so residents coming to Clark Lindsay are part of a life residency agreement. And so we agree to we take care of them regardless of whether they outlive their resources or not. And so over the years, we give benevolent care to those who outlive their resources. So that's been our business model from when it started.
Another question. So it seems like it's private. You really want to seek U of I employees, facility members? Like it just seems to me with the percentage being so high of the U of I alumni, it seems like that's basically who you seek to have as residents. Am I correct?
No, we're open to all residents, and we do serve a variety of residents with a lot of backgrounds. So it just happens to be that Clark Lindsay was founded by, was funded by two sisters, and then a team of local leaders, including university leaders, started Clark Lindsay, and so that is just part of its history over time. So but we actually serve a wide variety of people, business leaders, farmers, I mean, really all sorts. So the University of Illinois connection probably just comes out of the history of when we were founded, and also the proximity to the campus.
Okay, can you also explain to me, and maybe this is just going to, I'm just asking questions, but maybe you can answer this. What is your protocol when patients run out of insurance? Do they have any supplemental help that maybe can help outside of insurance, or do you just put them out?
We work with that family. Part of our planning is to make sure that people would have, if they didn't have the life residency contract, we work with that family to find a transition. And so, in the years, I've been at Clark Lindsay 25 years, and we have not just put anybody out. So,
but you've given them a time limit as to when they need to leave.
We work with them, yes.
And they don't have Medicaid as an option?
We do not have Medicaid as an option.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Furtado.
If I'll supplement that just briefly, I've worked in the industry for quite some time, despite my clean-shaven face, and this is without a doubt the definition of a moderately priced community. We have seen communities with costs for entrance fees, which is an entrance into the community, upwards of $1 million. Clark Lindsay fits the model of a moderately priced community that is for the community, as opposed to a high-rise condominium facility. So I think that should be borne in mind, especially when looking at the pricing model, that it really does fit what would probably strike the definition of moderate income.
And I would just also add, because it comes as a surprise to people, even though we are a 501c3, we have paid real estate taxes fully throughout our 45 years of history. So that amounts to about $700,000 a year. So some of the tax breaks that some 501c3s would see to offset the losses from Medicaid are not something that Clark Lindsay has benefited from or plans to in the future.
Mr. Patterson.
Thanks for coming out tonight to explain all this. So for this sort of process, as you guys have mentioned, there's not a cost to the county, but it is within our ability to decide who we want to give this benefit to and who is going to provide a benefit to the community. And I mean, just to simply put, 57% of Illinoisans in nursing homes are on Medicaid. So you guys have cut yourself off from 2/3 of the community. And the baby boomers are coming when it comes to your guys' world, much, much larger than the previous generation. And so I don't think that this provides the type of value that I would like to see in my community.
Ms. Furtado?
I am a firm believer that not-for-profits and private business can conduct their business how they want to. However, if you want to use a governmental tool in order to afford you an opportunity to save money, I expect that the values that are espoused in your organization would reflect the values that we as a body have espoused. Just to make sure that everybody here knows this, because I don't know if everyone does, we have responsible bidder language for the county that was passed in 2002 with a very creepily numbered Resolution 666. I didn't make that up, it's just what it's called, that for any project over $25,000, it will have prevailing wage. So I understand that you have like a couple of points in your slide that say you would plan to pay prevailing wage, but that the actual agreement to pay prevailing wage would be another administrative hurdle. I'm just going to be perfectly blunt. As finance chair, I wouldn't support this unless you pass that finance hurdle. That is the expressed value of this body, has been the expressed value of this body for 20 years. If you want to utilize a county tool to save you $500,000, that value will be expressed on this project. I want to put it that bluntly. And if it's not, you don't have my vote, and I will do everything to make sure that you don't have anybody else's. I want to be very, very clear on that. That is the value of this county. I get on Champaign all the time because the city of Champaign all the time because they always say they have all these values, but then they afford their sort of financial tools without actually putting those values forward. This is the first time since I've been on the board that we've actually been able to have that conversation. So I'll just be blunt, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say that. I'd have city councilors from Champaign coming and telling me, you tell us this all the time. So I just want to be very transparent about that is just frankly a deal breaker. And I don't mean on a slide, I mean a commitment that was executed in writing. And if not, just for me, I appreciate the work that you do, and I do want to reflect the concerns about Medicaid. I do also have those concerns. But that to me is another hurdle that I just want to make sure that I expressed because I don't want that to be a surprise.
Mr. Williams?
There are people here that do not believe that I should be here, and it's because I serve in another elected role. However, I actually believe that my other elected role actually makes me an asset to this board. But I understand if you disagree, I do. The reason I bring that up is you mentioned that as a 501c3, you pay property taxes. And I just want everyone here to know that just because you're a 501c3 doesn't mean you get out of paying property taxes. You have to be a charity. So you can be a 501c3 and not be a charity, and you still have to pay property taxes. I'd also like to add that your facility recently contested their assessment and got quite a bit of a reduction, which is your right. But I really think it's a red herring to mention that you pay property taxes, especially when you're not a charity.
Any other comments from the board or questions? Ms. Michaels?
Real quickly, back to the bonds and the issuing of the bonds. I know that those are very favorable in our community. We have a lot of people that are looking for a break from their federal and state tax, and so those tend to be very favorable and pretty easy to distribute or get sold, if you will. So I just wanted to comment that that would be an easy thing to get out there in the community and have sold.
Anything else? Okay, thank you all. Thanks for coming this evening. I think that concludes our business for this evening. Unless somebody has another issue, we are calling this meeting adjourned.
It's not bad.